Welcome back to another UNC basketball podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of basketball recruiting and an analyst. He is a coach, a longtime coach, our very own David Sisk. And David, if people haven't been checking out your film reviews, they have been extremely well received by our readers. And so if you don't know about Tar Heel Illustrated and you don't know about David's film reviews after the games, you got to go there, check us out, check out his film reviews. It's fantastic stuff. And that's one of the reasons we're going to be doing these regular podcasts throughout the basketball season, because I get to pick the brain of a coach. And I love doing that. And it's a coach that doesn't dislike me like most coaches do.
Well, they're jealous. They're jealous your suntan came back from Miami. I thought you were George Hamilton for a minute.
That'll never be said ever again. Chalk that up as the one time only something like that would ever be said.
Dan Marley.
I used to be able to shoot. I used to be able to shoot from the perimeter back in the day, man. Carolina's 4-2. They have wins over College of Charleston and NC Central, two what people would consider patsies, but they're programs with winning cultures and histories. And then they got a win over UNLV, which is struggling. And they beat what I think is a solid Stanford team that's going to win some games out in the Pac-12. The losses at the buzzer to Texas, when an almost 23-year-old hit a shot over a recent, just turned 19-year-old. And then Iowa, an old man team, which is really good, beat them, although the Tar Heels were competitive. So 6 games in, David, what is your snapshot take about where this Carolina team is?
Just going through that schedule right quick, Stanford's pretty good. And I thought we could really get kind of a gauge on this team, the second game in Asheville, when it was either going to be Stanford or Alabama. Was it Alabama or Stanford? Were they the teams that played before?
That was the first game. Yeah.
I was trying to remember who the other one was. Yeah, but we knew we could get a gauge that game. Stanford's really recruited well. They're going to be one of the better teams to Pac-12. Charleston, I think, is going to win a lot of games this year. Wouldn't be surprised if they don't win that league. I think those are 2 good wins. When I look at this team, I guess the thing that I kind of like about it, you know what to expect. I think there's a lot of teams right now that you don't know what to expect. That probably drives coaches crazy and fans crazy. But I think if you're Roy Williams and you're a creature of habit, you've been coaching as long as he has, you go in and you look at your team and say, all right, I know what we do well. I know what we don't do well. I don't have to have a lot of guesswork from night to night, from game to game, and then go back to the drawing board. We've got to fix what we do, take as many weaknesses as we have right now, try to make strengths out of them by the end of the year. So I like this team. I think we saw early on that the team, I think Ken Palm predicted them, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 18-9, somewhere in that range. I think that they had them 4-2 at this point. We're going to find out a little bit more the next 2 games here, but I know this: North Carolina has, if the guards play well, don't turn the ball over, and I think turnovers are a big thing right now. Turnovers, outside shooting, slow starts. They can kind of get through some of that stuff and get some of that worked out. They can beat a lot of good teams. I think this is a top 20 team. I don't think they're as great as what North Carolina fans have been used to in the past and what they expect, but I think they could be working toward that. Last thing I would say on that question, you remember you have these years, the year before, the really good year or the great year, that team kind of makes some strides. They get a lot of people back, and then that next year they're like Iowa last year, and some teams like that, Illinois, teams like that, and then they make that step into what they're doing now. That's kind of what I look at with this North Carolina team. I think they could be very good by the end of the year, and that's what I'll say, very good. And then next year sky's the limit, perhaps.
Yeah, we haven't actually discussed any of this, so this is all very.
We've never said a word about this to each other.
Yeah, I'm with you on 2 things big time. A, there's no gray area with this team.
Yeah.
6 games in, I even said about Iowa.
I think that's obvious. I think everybody knows that. So Yeah.
When Jacob and I did the three things when I was in Iowa, I said, the great thing about that game is Roy now knows exactly what he's got. And
Yeah.
he's got plenty of time to fix it. Sometimes it would take 8, 9, 10 games to really get an idea because you can get fooled when you play the Monmouths of the world. But they haven't really been doing that. And they were thrust right into it. And so he now knows. The other thing is, I agree with you. I've actually thought about the 2011 team that lost to Kentucky in the regional final in Newark. This club reminds me of that. That was Harrison Barnes' freshman year. They kind of remind me a little bit of that group. They were coming off a rough year in 2010. There was a lot of uncertainty, and they had to kind of figure things out. It was sort of kneading dough by Roy for the first couple of months of the season, and boom, they took off. I think this team has a chance of taking off at some point, but it is really simple when you start to answer the question, what do they have to do to take off? It begins with Caleb Love, because he's not going to make a switch. There's really no options to make that switch. Caleb Love has to become comfortable running the team, and he's got to get confident running the team. That's kind of a catchy thing there, because how can you gain the confidence without actually getting it done? So he's going to have to kind of do both at the same time. And that's the thing I think that will change this team the most, because they'll get more shots. And even if they miss a bunch of shots, their greatest offensive weapon right now is offensive rebounding, putting back their own misses and drawing fouls on offensive rebounds. And guys like Garrison Brooks will get more looks. This is an amazing stat. I was doing the research today. Garrison Brooks, in the last 19 games of last season, he averaged 19.9 points a game. He averaged 14 and a half shots a game. Right now, he's averaging 9.5 shots a game, because he's not getting the looks because of the turnovers and because the guards are having trouble making the entry. And because they can't shoot perimeter shots, teams are sagging a little bit, so he's not getting open as much either. So they got to start hitting a couple outside shots and then take care of the ball and get those entries, pick up Garrison's shot numbers, and the offense, he's going to play better, and the offense is going to be a lot better.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this in, though. I think, too, I think that it's more varied offensively this year. And what I mean by that is I think there's other places inside. You've got other post players. Baycott's going to get shots. Deron Sharp's going to get shots. And whether Caleb Love or R.J. Davis are making shots or not, they're going to get it's not going to be because they didn't shoot them. So I think there's kind of that to go around. I think last year, perhaps, now you watched them a lot more last year than I did, but I think that when you had the Cole Anthony injury, they kind of leaned on him. So yeah. I think you have some of that, but just to go think about this team, the only thing that we did talk about beforehand, we haven't talked by phone, and you said, well, a show idea, maybe three things they do well, 3 things they don't do well, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, that's easy. What they do well, that's the 3 I said, or don't do well. They're young, they turn the ball over, they get off the slow starts. What do they do well? They rebound, they get to the foul line, they're really good inside, quantity and quality. So, those things right now are kind of obvious about the team.
Yeah, and I don't think Garrison needs to take 14.5 shots a game with this team, but 9.5, especially when they're struggling to score. And you've got to get your ACC preseason player of the year. You've got to get him meshed with the other guys. I think he's had some trouble adapting to the guards. And part of it is because they're not taking care of the ball. And when they do take care of the ball, the offense is disjointed at times. The entries aren't always there. They're not doing a good job of recognizing the entry lanes. And teams are sagging down there. Now, the other guys like Baycott and Sharp and even Kessler, they have more length. They're going to get stuff off sometimes a little bit better.
We did that on the film review, going back. If you look at what we did after the Carolina Central game, and we called it, basically adapting to the opponent's game plan. And you could see, even in a high-low, they were playing off, and they were like, if you can make this jump shot from the foul line, more power to you. We're going to play back in the passing lanes. And we looked at the different ways that they, that they're kind of adapting to that and running their offense for what the defense gives them. But as they play bigger, stronger teams, and that's the thing with North Carolina Central, you might say, what's the difference in the mid-major and a high major? And even going back to Charleston, most of these teams have really good guards. There's a million good guards out there.
Yep.
But you know what happens? You play mid-majors instead of 6'10", 200 and 60-pound guys that look like Garrison Brooks. You're playing against 6'6", 225 pounds. They're really smaller. So, and that's the thing. One thing I'll say too about Caleb Love, and one thing I noticed Saturday, I'm trying to think how I would phrase this. I think sustained success would be my phrase, because he made turnover. I mean, he would make 2 or 3 really good plays. And I'm thinking about a couple of passes he made on fast breaks. He made a great lob on the backdoor play. He made one against the zone. He made one off the Carolina secondary where he get the back pick. So he's made a couple of really good passes in a row. And then the next time he comes down, he's on a wing and he tries to whiz one in the middle of the zone. Pass goes from the point to the wing, bang, tries to go inside. There's 8 hands there. And it's like he starts feeling his oats a little bit right now. And that goes with being young. In high school, you can know when Caleb Love got on the roll in high school, it was over. But when you're a freshman and you get on a roll in college and have 3 or 4 good plays, if you're not careful, it could lead to a bad play. And that's what he's got to learn. He's really got to be able to control himself and just be at an even kill and not get excited with all that.
One of the things that Carolina fans need to understand about Caleb is if you go back and look at some of the best point guards that have played for Roy that came in as freshmen, they were freshmen under Roy, and they eventually took over. They got the keys. Ty Lawson didn't start the first 5 or 6 games. Bobby Frazier did. Bobby was the starter the year before. And by the way, he was a true freshman starter at the point. Then Kendall Marshall came in. He didn't replace Larry Drew in the starting lineup until late January, early February, and that's when that team really took off. And then you look even at Kobe White a couple of years ago. Roy laid out a competition, Kobe White versus Seventh Woods. The minutes were almost identical through 5 games. And then Kobe blew up against Texas, hit 33 points in a game in Vegas. But Kobe was at 37% through 5 games, and they played a much lesser schedule. They played teams like St. Francis of Pennsylvania and Tennessee Tech, Elon Wofford, and a bad Stanford team. Those were their first 5 games. And Kobe had 14 assists and 12 turnovers in that stretch. He was shooting about 30% from 3-point range, and he was struggling a little bit, kind of figuring things out. So he was not only going up against a lesser schedule, but he had Kenny Williams on the perimeter with him, who was a senior. He had Cam Johnson out there. He had Garrison Brooks, who was an experienced sophomore inside, and Luke May inside. It's a totally different dynamic with what Caleb Love's dealing with right now, and he's gone against older guys. I said in another podcast I did with Jacob, the point guard at Texas is almost 23 years old. The starting point guard for Iowa turned 23 in June, Jordan Bohannon. So these are older guys that probably got into Caleb's head a little bit, and he's learned some stuff on film, and he's going to be better for the experience. But he needs to be allowed an adjustment period. He's getting it right now. Now the Titans schedule and ACC play start next week. He's going to have to pick this up pretty quickly. But I think a lot of people need to understand that it takes some of these kids a little bit of time in Roy Williams' system to learn how to run things the way Roy wants them to, and also learn how to defend the point the way Roy wants them to. Caleb's only had 6 games, and it's been a pretty difficult schedule so far. So if he is the kind of player Lawson was, and the kind of player Marshall was, and the kind of player that Kobe White was, and everybody believes that he is and will be, then you might start to see a change, an ascent here in the next couple of games.
Yeah, and Roy might say I'm wrong here, but North Carolina doesn't give out a lot of offers, and they target the guys that they want because they watch players over and over and over, and they talk to them, and they talk to their families, and this song and dance may go on for months or a year or so before they ever offer. So when they offer somebody, he's got a pretty good idea if it's going to work or not, and what meshes in. And I say that to say this: a lot of programs will kind of switch what they do year to year to match what the players do. I think Roy kind of looks at players. He said, "Okay, can he fit into our system?" Because Roy's going to do what he does. You watch them from, like you say, you mentioned those teams back, the stuff that they run, that's what they run now. So you've got to fit into that system. And so you have to learn from that. It's not like Roy's going to say, okay, you win. We're going to adjust what we do to what you do. It's not that way. And one thing I'll say too, in the long run, for Carolina fans out there that may worry, in the long run, it may be the best thing, because I think this learning curve that you talk about may make it more likely that Caleb's back his sophomore year. This has not been talked about much, but Jonathan Givony of ESPN, who is probably the most trusted when it comes to mock drafts. I know people I know who are NBA scouts and front office. That's the guy they go to. So I really started, when they were telling me about him, I really started following him a couple of years ago. And they originally had Caleb in the 2021 mock draft between 11 and 15. He is, if I'm not mistaken, was 44. And this was like the first one they've done since the season, the top 100. So he's out of the first round. I would think, and I've spoken with someone who knows him well from St. Louis in the last 3 days, and he's adamant there's no way Caleb comes out after the first year. He's a multi-year player at North Carolina. So I think this curve helps that. Now, Day'Ron Sharpe's played his way in. But
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
He's into top 15. So he's right about where he was ranked by rivals. But also, I don't think you look at next year, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but I wanted to say this while I was talking about Caleb Love. I don't think you jump ahead now and you say, well, Baycott, he's going to be gone too, and Walker Kessler is going to be gone. And he was kind of worried about that the first of the year, but I think those two come back in the post. You've got a good chance of Caleb Love coming back. RJ Davis comes back. And you've got freshmen coming in, good freshmen. That's why I kind of talk about, when I look at this team meshing and being more experienced, next year could be really a fun year.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Sharp, because I saw recently where he's kind of skyrocketing up. What is it about his game that translates to the next level that you're seeing right now at UNC that, for someone who doesn't watch as much NBA as I used to, like when I covered it, and I used to cover the Bobcats some, I kind of understood what the league was all about, what they were looking for, but it's changed some in recent years. Day'Ron looks like a guy, somebody on our board actually said he looks like a young, Moses Malone from a long time ago. And that's a pretty good comparison if you could think back to the way Moses played. How does a guy like that translate to the modern day NBA?
Well, I was surprised by that, because there's a reason Garrison Brooks didn't go to draft last year. He's not in the first 2 rounds next year. So, Garrison could very well go as a guy who signs in, goes to summer league and signs the 2-way contract, one of those type of deals. Whereas, and the thing is, if Garrison would have been back in the 80s, he might be in the NBA. Yeah. But, when I look at Day'Ron, I'm saying, all right, boy, man, he's got some tools. He is athletic. He's big and strong. But I don't know if his game translates to what they want post to do, and that's ball screen and pop, run the floor, protect the rim, more agile. I don't know if it – so I was kind of surprised by that, not because of his talent, but by the way his game manifests itself to what they're looking for in the NBA. Here's the one big difference I see. I think Day'Ron's much more athletic. Garrison Brooks plays under the rim, and that's one thing I look for. Day'Ron Sharpe doesn't play under the rim. Day'Ron Sharpe gets the ball. He's going to put that ball back and touch it between his back blades and dunk, where Garrison's shooting up into it. I think I look at those. I mean, it's obvious. They've got 4 really good posts, and they just wear on people. I think this front line's as good as anybody in the country. But you take the athleticism of Day'Ron Sharpe and compare it to the athleticism of Brooks, of Baycott, or Kessler, and, he's on a whole different plane.
One of the things that's really impressed me about Day'Ron so far is that when he has the ball around the free throw line extended, he looks fairly comfortable. And he's a good, willing passer and a good passer from out there. He sees the floor well. They run some good high-low stuff with him. If he could show that he could knock down that shot some, and he's a good passer, that's really going to open up some stuff in the lane and may help offset some of the issues that they're having on the perimeter.
I go back to Bam Adebayo with Miami. Now, he's much bigger than Bam was at that time.
Yeah.
I watched Bam's maturation from college to early last year before COVID hit. And I watched him play the Heat play twice. early in the year, and Bam got really good off the ball screen. He couldn't pop very well yet, but he got into that foul line at that mid-range, and he could take him a dribble, and he could be about 8 to 10 feet out. He could shoot off both feet and just shoot a little. It's crazy for a post, but just a little teardrop. He went off 2 feet. He was good at that. Well, during COVID, he worked, and then you could see when they came back, he was stretching out to that three-point line area. So I saw a guy there in the last 2 or 3 years. You take a guy who couldn't make a shot beyond 4 or 5 feet, and now he's stretching it in the NBA. So I can see that kind of improvement potentially with Daron. You know, I think he's got that type of potential.
You brought up Armando a few minutes ago. Some of the changes I've seen in his game is number one, more consistency now. And a big part of that is last year, something about, and I've said this a couple of times in a few of our podcasts before, but something negative would happen on the court, and it kind of stuck with him during transition down to the other end of the court. And it doesn't happen anymore. And one of the things I was really impressed with the NC Central game was that he actually reminded me at times of like a thicker Brad Daugherty around the basket. The way he was able to get the ball on the right side, dribble and go up and score with his left hand. He was really comfortable around the rim. He was bouncier than he was a year ago. And I really like the way his game is trending right now. And going back to the shot opportunities about Garrison, well, you know, a lot of times Armando didn't make himself available that well last year when they were both on the court together. He's doing a much better job of that. And that's what goes back to those guards, David. If the guards clean things up and get better at the entries, they've got so many ways to beat you inside. And if you think about it, Armando's different from Garrison, who's different from Daron, who's different from Walker Kessler. They can really get you any conceivable way down low. And Armando's a big part of that because he's a guy that can step away from a few feet. And he's so good around the rim. He cleans that stuff up. He scores a high percentage of his points on offensive rebounds. And the fact that he hit some free throws the other day, which was really impressive because his team hadn't been doing that. They were actually 13 for 13 in the second half. And that's probably why they won the game, believe it or not. That to me is a huge plus for this team and a big positive when you start thinking about in ways that guys from last year are better this year. Armando clearly is a better player.
Yeah.
And has a lot of room to grow too still.
Those numbers, they were well over 80%. If they shoot foul shots as well as they shot Saturday, they beat Texas.
Yep.
And they're in the thick of it at Iowa, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the number 3 team in the country they played at their best because they were making threes from all over the place. And when I was making threes, they can beat anybody. But you look at Baycott's numbers, starting with, I'm going from the first game to the last, and I'll have points and rebounds 11-8, 12-5, 10-6. He's had triple 10 and 12, 4 and 11, 19 and 11. So you take away the 4-point game he had against Iowa, and that game probably was too fast for him. He's had 11 points, 11, 12, 10, 10, 19. So he's had one game where he's not been in double figures. And rebounds, he's had double-digit rebounds, 12, 11, 11 in his last 3 games. He had 8 in his first game. So like you say, you're really looking at consistency. And in the game where he had 4 at Iowa, he only got 4 shots. But here's the amazing thing. When you look at him, he's had double figures, so 5 out of the first 6 games. He has only shot more than 5 times in one game, and that was North Carolina Central. He's 6 for 7.
He's only playing 22 minutes a game. Yeah. He's grabbing a rebound every 2.58 minutes he's on the floor.
Yeah, and that's crazy. So you're looking at a guy who's took 11, 16, 21, 29 shots and has scored 64 points. So, you talk about efficiency. He's shooting 71.4% from the line. It's pretty good for a post. It's better than the team average has been. Yeah. So if you shoot 70%, the whole thing is supposedly if you shoot 70% from the field, from the line, you're going to win. That's what the coach's goals are. Yeah. So, I mean, definitely he's been, man, like you say, night and day, just consistency. And man, I watching him Saturday, he was just a force. It was just a guy nobody wanted to deal with.
Another one of the returning players that I've seen a lot of positives from this year is Leaky Black.
Yeah.
I asked Garrison and I asked Leaky a question before the season. What does a healthy Leaky Black look like? Because he was never healthy last year. He had turf toe for much of the season, and he had a bum ankle for a big part of it. So we never saw a guy that could get into the lane and could draw defenders. In fact, he only attempted like 44 free throws or something last season, and he was second on the team with 950 minutes. This year, though, Leaky scored 6 or 7 field goals going to the basket in the lane. He had an offensive rebound against Central the other day on the left side where he just went up, grabbed that thing, and went right back up and kissed it off the glass from about 4 feet away. I never saw that from him last year. And then most impressive, and Roy Williams has to love this because he's always ridden his wings to get more rebounds. He rode Justin Jackson like crazy to get more rebounds. He rode Cam Johnson like crazy his first year to get more rebounds. Cam did a much better job his second year grabbing boards. But in the last 5 games, Leaky has 43 rebounds. He's averaging 7.5 on the season. And he's really getting to the rim.
He had 2 rebounds his first game. Yep. So that's an outlier. Excuse it a little bit. If you take that first game out, he's had 10, 7, 10, 9, and 7. I'm reading this off my phone. So I'm looking. That's 8.6 rebounds a game, over the last 5 games.
And one of the things we talked about in a video we did before the season when we did the Leaky Black video was one of the things he needs to provide for this team is you got to get the rebound first, rip and then run. And he's not a fast guy. He's not going to blow by a bunch of people, but he sees the floor well. He's very aware and alert. He can rip it, dribble a couple times, and kick the thing ahead. And the ball always goes faster than the legs. And they should, and I think will be, a better fast break team as a lot of this stuff kind of formulates over time. And one of the reasons why is because Leaky's ability to get the ball, turn, dribble, and get that thing going from where he is. He's done it a few times already. Don't ever remember seeing it last year. So and also defensively, Leaky's played a little bit better defensively. So he's not going to score a ton of points. People shouldn't judge him by that. They should judge him by everything else. And when those guards get stuff figured out and they're out there with Leaky Black, who is a willing passer and a pretty good passer and a guy that's shown an ability to use the dribble to get in the lane some and get a bunch of rebounds, even some offensive rebounds, this team is going to have a part that nobody knew for sure if they had that part on the wing. He's not hitting shots. And that's the other thing. He's got to hit some, but at least he's doing just about everything else for him right now that you wanted from a guy like him before the season.
Well, healthy Leaky Black, so he's playing 28.8 minutes per game through the first 6. It's a difference of somebody playing 40 minutes, but that's still a lot of minutes. So obviously he's healthy. And to me, it shows of his athleticism because there are about 2 or 3. Now, what I'm going to say is blasphemy in North Carolina. So if I was in Chapel Hill,
don't say it.
they'd probably drag me to the town square and stone me to death. But there's about 2 or 3 plays a game where he just swoops to the rim and lays it in and just leaves everybody else to tracks. And his arm is like that over the rim. And he just swoops. And I'm going, my God, he looks like James Worthy. And then the rest of the time he looks like Leaky Black. But that's okay. Leaky Black, what I've seen, that's fine. Now,
you're talking about that high one-handed little kiss, right?
Oh gosh, and he just like I said, he's just like a stork, swoops. Yeah. Now, if you look
that's what that offensive rebound and putback against Central was like. Yeah. It was on the weak side, and that's exactly what that looked like the other day.
Now, if you look at what he does, he's not going to beat you outside shooting the ball, shooting the 3, shooting a long 2. That's not his game. I think that's where him and Andrew Platek are so good, kind of working in tandem, because Andrew's making some shots out there and can kind of do that. But I'm going to tell you what Leaky does. We talked about the rebounding, long defensively, out in the open floor, getting loose ball. He makes winning plays. And you said he's a Swiss Army knife. You said that before the year started. The more I watch him, the more I like him. But the thing about him, too, is his size at the 3. I mean, there's a reason he grabs these rebounds. He is long-armed. He's big at that 3 spot. A lot of places he'd be playing a 4. And, if this was a small ball team, that's probably what he'd be doing. But he makes that team even bigger he's got to have around 7. I don't know what his wingspan is. It's got to be around 7 feet. So when you take him, I wouldn't be surprised if wingspan, if they stood and just stuck their arms up, if his reach is not longer than Garrison Brooks's. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So when you look at that, man, that's why they can play 2 smaller guards on the back, because when you put him in any combination of those posts in, man, they are long on that back end and are big. And I think this team defensively, we've talked a lot about the offense, but because of that size and having a guy out there at that 3 spot that can move like he can, I believe he can, hopefully for them, be a lockdown guy as the season goes and can really help this team to where it is a good defensive team before the year's out.
He played the 4 in a couple of games last year. He started the 4 at Louisville. He actually started 7 games at the point, 1 game at the 4, a couple at the 2, and the rest at the 3 last year.
That's why we come to you, buddy. That's why we come to you.
Well, my wife is covering this guy. My wife will tell you when I'm in the season, she doesn't see me very often, which is probably a win for her. But I wrote a story about it and talked to Leaky in the locker room after the game at Louisville, which was one of their worst performances, just about adapting, going from starting at the 1 to starting at the 4 in about a 3-week stretch, which is what he did. And he spoke about being versatile. He spoke about, if you have the body to do both, and you understand the game, it's not that big of an adjustment. And that's one of the things that Leaky does bring to the fore. He's a smart player. He understands the game. He feels the game well. We could see more of that now that he is healthy. If he could, just shoot the ball a little bit better, it would take his game to another level. He hasn't shown he could do that yet. And I'm not sure he's going to show that. The way he shoots the ball, something about it, I don't ever think the shot's going in like you think when other guys shoot the ball.
No, but don't you think too, Andrew, even despite that there's let's say what you feel about this team. Let's say, just take your personal feelings. Don't you feel like there's a confidence around him? Because it sounds to me like before the year started, we're like, we don't know. Because you asked the question, what's a healthy Leaky Black look like? And I remember the reason I say that, and this is a person who is a basketball recruiting analyst who's seen him play a lot, and he knows the country of high school basketball. He knows the region. And he said, when North Carolina is bringing in Dontrez Styles, that may be looking at more of a guy where they're going to stretch the floor a little bit with him at that 3 spot, and the athleticism and all that. And everything that I heard about him, I'm not sure about the shooting. I'm seeing it though right now with Leaky Black. That he's that bigger wing, that athletic wing. There can't be many guys more athletic than he is.
They just went through Justin Jackson, who's 6'8", and won a national title. He was the ACC Player of the Year, and went through Cam Johnson, who by the time he left I'm convinced Cam's got to be 6'10" by now. He was 6'8" when he showed up. He was 6'9" by the time his senior year started at Carolina, and long. And Roy liked having those guys that could shoot over dudes, but also have the ability to put the ball on the floor. Leaky doesn't have that ability to shoot over people right now, at least successfully. And he has shown a little bit more of an ability to put the ball on the floor and get some stuff happening this year, which has been a positive. It'll be interesting if he can hit some shots to see if that actually helps his drive as well. And he can get in the lane, do stuff, because I'd like to see him have that floater that Cam Johnson had, and Justin had one too. In fact, there were a lot of jokes that Roy used to joke about Justin Jackson, that he shoots too many floaters, and he would shoot them from like 10 feet away, 8 feet out, which is very long for a shot like that. And then at one point, Roy's like, well, as long as he makes those damn things, that's all that matters.
That's exactly the shot I'm talking about with Bam Adebayo.
Yeah,
maybe that little shot off there off the rope.
But you mentioned Andrew Playtech. Let's get on him for a minute, because I really like what Andrew's done this year, and he takes a lot of crap from people on social media and stuff, and they got to understand the game a little bit better, because when you look at the runs that this team has made in a lot of their games, you go back to Charleston, it was 40-40 when he entered the game in the second half, and when he came out, it was 67-50. You look at Vegas, it was 13-0, and he and a few other guys went in, and he played very well on the floor, and that started changing that game. If you go to Iowa, he had 10, 11 points at Iowa, and he was really big during that 19-minute stretch in the middle of the game when Carolina scored 53 points. Andrew was on the floor for a lot of that. And then, of course, the other day, he ignited him against Central, had 8 straight points. Andrew is playing well. He's 7 for 16 from the perimeter. I've watched him for years in warmups, just catch and shoot, rhythm shots in warmups, and it's nothing but the bottom of the net, nothing but the bottom of the net. Then he'd get into the game and he'd be open. The very same shot I saw him hit 10 straight times in warmups, he'd hesitate and he'd miss the shot, often short. One of the things I've noticed this year is the shots he hit in Asheville, the 2 threes he hit against Iowa, and at least one of the 2 threes he hit against Central, they were rhythm shots, no hesitation whatsoever, and it was nothing but the bottom of the net. That's a huge thing for this team because Andrew's going to be happy to help in whatever way Roy asks him to. And if it's 8 minutes one night against one team and 20 the next night against somebody else, I think that where his confidence is now, he's going to be able to deliver most nights. He's a better player than a lot of Carolina fans give him credit for. And so far, he's been one of their more consistent players. Aside from Texas, when he didn't play well and looked overmatched, he's played pretty well for them so far. And that's a good guy to have coming off the bench.
I look at his numbers. He's by far the best three-point shooter on the team, 43.8%. And that's throwing in 1 for 5 in the first game against Charleston. Yeah. You take that out of the equation, he's 6 for 11 since then from 3 after the first in the last 5 games. And I think that's kind of what Roy is asking him to do. And I think the pressure may be off a little bit. I think Roy, will the depth that he has and the way Leakey's playing now, and obviously he's turned it over to the freshman guards, and they're going to learn through their mistakes. But I think he's like, okay, if we talked about it earlier, if he knocked down shots, he can stay on the floor, but knock down the open 3, make the winning plays for us. And that's the thing I've noticed in those games. It's stuff that may not show on the scorebook. Yep. Diving to get a loose ball, deflecting the ball out of bounds. I go back to I'm trying to remember which game it was. I want to say it was maybe the Stanford game. I'm trying to think which one it was, but they made a little run there, and they were kind of in the doldrums. They made a run, and everything that they got, he had like 2 hustle plays in a row. He had 2 offensive rebounds, and I think they hit 2 threes off both offensive rebounds. Maybe another game. I'm wanting to think it's Stanford. But he's always in the mix of it. And Saturday, I know you said you didn't get to see the second half because you were in Miami.
Yeah, I'm going to watch that actually tonight.
Here's what you'll look for. And I want you to look at the bench reaction in the second half. They weren't making shots. They were on a little bit of a run. It's hard to make a big run when you're not making threes. They stretched the lead a little bit. It was still single digits. He comes in, bang, bang, knocks down 2 threes in a row. That was the only 2 threes they hit for the game. They were like 2 for 15. And if he doesn't make those 2, they don't make any. And you could just see the bench, and they go from like up 7 to up 13 or something like that. And you could just see the bench, and it was like the weight of the world came off them. They didn't need a barrage. They didn't need to make 10 threes, but they did those other things that helped them dominate the game or to be ahead. They just needed a spark, and it's like he came in and hit those. I don't see why, maybe in the past, but this year I don't see what's not to love about him because he's doing nothing but making winning plays. Yeah, nobody's going to confuse him with Michael Jordan or anybody like that, but he's making winning plays for this team.
Absolutely. There was a sequence at Iowa, and one of the many benefits of covering a team on the road and being there and is you get to see things that you're never going to see on TV. And there was a sequence at Iowa where Caleb Love made a mistake. It was a turnover. It was a dead ball turnover. So they had time to go up the court. And Andrew went over to him, started talking to him, put his hand on him and was pointing something out to him. And Caleb was listening, and he nodded. And there's another value that Andrew brings to the floor out there, because sometimes when he's out there with those freshman guards, he's going to be in the right place. He's not going to be out of place. He's going to do the right thing. He'll point sometimes. If you watch him closely, the point, he's chattering. If they're not swinging it quickly, you can almost see him communicating that to some of the guys. And that's an undervalued quality. And that the only way he can do that and be listened to, David, is if he is hitting those shots. He's had 3 double-figure scoring games this year. If he continues to do that enough, it'll command the respect of those young kids. And that's where a little bit of leadership could come out in him, because I'm not sure this team has great leadership just yet. I'm still waiting to see that come out. Garrison's not super vocal. Leakey's not a super vocal guy. Armando's just still figuring things out for himself, and he's only a sophomore. But Andrew's a vocal guy. Andrew could speak the game. He could be like a spokesman. If this was the olden days, pre-coronavirus, and we had access to a locker room, I would go to Andrew a lot just to kind of get a vibe of the team. Mm-hmm. He's one of those kind of guys. So if he's playing well, he could talk to Caleb Love in the course of the game. Caleb's going to listen a little bit more. It's just human nature to be that way. So him continuing to play well is huge on so many levels for this team.
And he'll have Roy Williams' trust. I promise you that one. And
most part, yeah.
I understand. Well, like I say, Roy's going to let these freshmen play through it. So they're going to be out on the court, and Leakey's getting more minutes. Andrew, I'm looking at his numbers, and he's averaging 14.8 minutes, and it looks like that 15 minutes. He's played 15 minutes exactly in 15 minutes in 2 of the last 5 games and 16 minutes in 2 of the last 5. So 4 of the last 5 games, he either played 15 or 16. So it's been consistent. So I think that Roy's got a plan for him. This is his role. This is how many minutes you get per game. And as long as he does that, and he's got Roy's trust with what he does for these younger players, it's hard to cut his time and not have him off the floor.
Absolutely. Especially when he's one of the only guys hitting threes. The other guy hitting some threes has been RJ Davis. And we talked Caleb Love. RJ's a guy that has a really interesting combination of skill and grit. He's a gritty guard. He's a guy who doesn't mind mixing it up. I've seen him carry him off dudes, bigger guys, especially in Asheville, like a pinball, and he just gets up. There's got to be some football in his background. I know we used to watch Joel Berry do that, and some people have compared RJ to Joel Berry, and I think it's a fair comparison in some ways. But I like what RJ brings to the floor. I remember I was thinking back to what we talked about in our freshman podcast that we did before the season, and you were talking about the things you liked about RJ. I see all of that in games. I don't really think there's a big issue with the way RJ has played so much. I think that he would better complement Caleb Love if Caleb was playing the way that I think Caleb eventually will play. If Caleb gets up to that level fairly soon and RJ's still kind of doing what he's doing, he's got to pick up the shooting percentage a little bit more. And the assist to turnover ratio has to be a little bit better. But I think that will come with Caleb Love playing better. I think Roy probably is fairly pleased with what RJ has shown so far, and confident that more will come out as the season goes on.
He was shooting over 50% from 3 until Saturday. He's 10 for 18. He was 10 for 18, and then he went 0 for 5. Saturday was 2 for 10 from the field. He struggled Saturday, but if you look at his numbers, assist, he's actually, for all the turnovers they make, he is actually ahead assist to turnovers, 2.8 to 2.3. Now, the first 2 games, he only had 1 turnover apiece. So he's had 3 turnovers in each of the last 4 games.
Yeah. Well, he's been on the ball more. He's been on the ball more. He's handled a lot more.
I still think, and I get a little bit of flack for this, that's okay, but I think he is the point guard. I really do. I think he's the point guard. I think when it comes down to it, he's played that spot more. And I hope that Caleb Love proves me wrong on that, because if he does, that's the best for him. If Caleb Love can be solid at that point guard spot, man, that's great for North Carolina. But I tell you why I really like RJ Davis too. Now, I like Caleb Love in his spot too. I think you've got 2 guards that will get up in you. You said they got some moxie. They're not afraid. They've got that swagger. They'll get up in you. I think Caleb takes plays off a little bit more defensively from what I've seen. But, man, I just like the way RJ Davis – I've seen some point guards in the past who, man, they could absolutely flip a game because they could get up and hound the other point guard and just make their life miserable. and it would just totally change the tempo and set a tone for the game. And I think that's what he's got. I think he's got some of that moxie. I think the word I look at him, I think he's got grit. The word now, they like he's got some dog in him.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
No doubt.
I think he's that. He appears to me to be that kind of guy.
He's got a motor. He's got a motor big time. He was on the ball.
You look at the point guard. You look at the great point guards that have come through North Carolina, and obviously those are the straws that stirs the drink. That they kind of going back to Phil Ford's the first one I remember, but kind of like Jimmy Black, and you go back to those teams, and you mentioned so many other players, but Jimmy Black was the point guard and held that thing together and meshed. And I think you talk about the guy that I think that the players are going to listen to as it goes. I think as R.J. Davis gets experience, he'll be that kind of guy because I think he just looks to me kind of like the guy that commands respect.
He will be the voice of the program at some point while he's in Carolina. During those pushes they made against Texas and the one they made at Iowa, he was on the ball quite a bit during those pushes. And Roy pulled Caleb off. And quickly about Caleb, I think Caleb's still thinking a lot, so it makes him slower. As basketball, when you think, you're slower. And Caleb's still thinking a lot. The adjustment, I think, has been a little bit more challenging for him from high school to this level. And I think part of that comes with just having the keys handed to you by this coach and the demands that Roy is making. Roy's coaching these kids not like they're yes, like they're freshmen because he's going to be patient with them because he has to be patient with them. They don't have a ton of options back there, but he's also very demanding, and he's kind of speeding up that whole process, which is why I think when the light goes on for Caleb, it's going to be something that happens very quickly.
And think too, and let me say this, I think maybe playing him off the ball a little bit or not at the point may not be just because, okay, I don't think you can be the point guard. But I think it may be too, like you say, thinking too much. Yep. Playing off the ball might free him up a little bit. Because here's what I'll tell you about Caleb Love. If there's a guy anywhere that can get on a run and on a string, and you look up and somebody's got 25 points and he's just lighting the opponent up, it's Caleb Love. Yeah. Some of his stuff, I watch him from high school, and I'm like, my goodness. I mean, he put on some shows and against good players.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt in my mind he could do it. And Caleb Love can be a prolific scorer, and I don't use that word lightly, prolific scorer in North Carolina. But I think his strength to do that, like I said, maybe playing off the ball a little bit where he doesn't have to worry about where everybody else is at and running the team. And he's got all this on his mind, but he's freed up off the ball to do what he can do, and that's get the ball and put it in the hole.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to continue seeing both. Roy told us, hey, you're going to see both of them on the ball. You're going to see RJ on the ball when Caleb's on the floor. He's not just going to be the backup when Caleb goes to the bench. And we've only seen KJ Smith at one point, and that was when both RJ and Caleb were really struggling, and Roy was trying to send him a message, and that lasted about 2 minutes, and he put him back in. So it's going to be Caleb or RJ on the ball as long as they're healthy the whole way through.
30.1% from the field right now, and 16% from deep. I would have never thought that it would be that low, but here's what it tells me. If you would have told me that back in September, say, okay, when we do our Game 6 Zoom call or Game 6 podcast, there's going to be his numbers. What's going through your mind? I would have said freshman. Yeah. Just trying to get the speed of the game. He's got too much going on. He's trying to learn how to play a college game. And I think that would probably bother a scorer more than anything because he's out of his comfort zone. But it'll come. There's no doubt it'll come. I'm not saying that as a fanboy. It'll come.
Yeah, it will. Kobe White had a couple of big scoring games in Vegas, but it still took a couple more weeks for the light to go on as far as being fully connected with the other guys. And that was game 11 of his freshman year. And that was against Kentucky in Chicago when he had that game. So Caleb got to have to maybe happen quicker because of the shortened season, because they're going to be in the ACC play next week. But I don't see any reason to think that it's not going to happen at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, he's David Sisk. I'm Andrew Jones. You've been listening to another UNC basketball podcast right here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. Go check our stuff out. You don't get that much access to David's stuff because most of it's premium, so you got to go sign up for just $8.33 a month.
Can I throw one more out here?
Yeah, sure.
Because I want to say, because I'll never think of it again, but we were talking about some of the players from the past. And we mentioned James Worthy and all that, when we're talking about Leaky Black. You know who goes through my mind, and this is from personal experience, who goes through my mind when I think about the bigger perimeter players in North Carolina history is Antoine Jamison. And I'm going to tell you why. In 1993, yes, not 93. These are 93 and 94. It's when the 17-year-old nationals, and we've talked about this before at Winston-Salem, and I know that when we've talked about it in earlier podcasts, there's a lot of people on the boards like that, and they were talking about the old Bob Gibbons tournament and AAU's being in Winston-Salem. We had a really good team of travelers, had Ron Mercer and some other guys. I think we'd lost one game all spring, and that was to Allen Iverson and Boo Williams. So that was the summer Allen Iverson got in trouble, and he didn't play in the AAU Nationals. And we were just looking for who our competition would be. And so I'm there the first day, game's going all day long. So the head coach comes back, and I'm new. It's my first year. I'm a kid. So he says, all right. He said, is there anybody here to play with us? And I said, yes. And not only can they play with us, they can beat us. I said, it's the Charlotte Royals. And I got a kid named Antoine Jamison who can do everything Ron Mercer can do. The only problem is he's about 3 inches taller. And sure enough, they beat us in the semifinals. So and I knew the first time I ever saw him play, he has got star written all over him. And that's a guy I remember.
He had the quickest second leap. He'd go up, come back, and he'd go right back up, and it's the quickest I'd ever seen. He had 35 or 36 against Duke one night, and he had the ball. He actually had the ball in his hands for like 53 seconds, something crazy like that. I wrote a story about him in 98, his third year at Carolina, about how he was extending his game. And what's amazing, because he got to the NBA later on, he became a pretty good three-point shooter. He was in that process. It was neat when you look back on it in college, just going out a few more feet. And by the time he got to the league, he's in his third year or so, he's hitting threes. And that's a guy who worked hard. He worked on his game as much as anyone. He had all those natural gifts, but he put in the time. He was a phenomenal college player and probably not remembered in the way that he probably should be. If he would have come back for his senior year, he would have set the records that Hansbrough never would have broken.
Yeah.
All-time leading scorer, all-time leading rebounder. Hansbrough ended up breaking all those records and stuff. But Antoine Jamison is one of the best college players I've ever covered, by far.
One of the things I remember that weekend, or that week rather, also I wore Michael Jordan's first NBA championship ring. I had that on my finger that week. And the other one was one of the local TV stations was airing, showing thing for their sports at 6:30 or whatever. And I go back to the hotel, turn on the TV, and I'm looking at it. It comes on, and first thing they show, there I was sitting in the chair between Phil Ford and Billy Packer. And they're going, there's Phil Ford, and there's Billy Packer. Who's the fool sitting between
some
them?
other guy? What's the story behind the ring?
We would go out every night to some local place, I don't know where. And college coaches loved it. You could get out, man. It was some fun times. Buzz Peterson was either at East Tennessee State that time or North Carolina State. He was an assistant coach. And Buzz was great. Buzz would get out, but no, he wouldn't drink. He wouldn't do anything like that. He was drink water. I have no stories on Buzz Peterson, none. So I want to make that clear. But
if you do, they're not going on this podcast because we're going to get in trouble.
No, he wanted to go out. He was recruiting players and everything. So that's what you do, So anyway, we're all at a table and it's late. And Buzz has got this rock on his finger that's like, just huge. And I'm like, man, that's a national championship ring. And he said, no, it's an NBA championship ring. And I said, you didn't play in the NBA, Buzz. And he said, it's Michael's. And Michael sent him a ring because he took care of Michael when he was at North Carolina. They were roommates. Buzz's family was independently wealthy, and Buzz took care of him, and Michael never forgot it. So he sent him a ring, and I said, "Can I put it on?" He said, "Yeah," and I never will forget. I put it on, and I'm just shaking. I'm afraid I was going to drop it down a manhole cover or whatever. I don't know, in the middle of a restaurant. So, but no, I put on Michael's. I wore Mike Smithson. That might be a name you remember. But he's athletic director over here in Borden County, and he had his Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, pitcher.
I had that. Yeah. So I've had two of them on.
Yeah, Eddie Murray went deep on Mike Smithson a couple times.
You remember everything about it. You could run his supper, huh?
By the way, Buzz and Michael have been great friends, and Buzz worked for him with the Hornets there. He might still be there. I'm not 100% sure.
I think he is.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, he's David Sisk. I'm Andrew Jones. $8.33 a month. You can be a premium subscriber to TarHillIllustrated.com and get all of David's stuff that doesn't go on podcasts and plenty of stuff there is, plus everything else. We go where the Tar Heels go, football and basketball. We cover recruiting hard. We're on top of everything. So go check us out. And if you like this video, go ahead and click like, hit the notification bell, subscribe to us so you always know when we upload a video, and we do it often. He's David. I'm AJ. Thanks for stopping by.